Gluing your miniatures together can be dangerous, and Saga of Dice takes no responsibility in the unlikely event that you glue your hands together. Or something else. Caution is advised. Give a wargamer a magnetized mini, they swap loadouts for one model, but teach a wargamer to magnetize, and they swap loadouts for life. Welcome to a very different video from Saga of Dice, something I've not really done before. So if you'd like to see more of this kind of content, then please drop me a line in the comments to tell me so I know that you want more of this specific kind of content. Also do all that good stuff like subscribing, whatever. You can join the Patreon if you like. You could request more specific specific sort of hobby videos if you'd like. The link will be in the description below. But without further ado, first I'd like to suggest people watch the whole video. I've never said this before, but I think there will be a lot of good tips sprinkled throughout, and the purpose of this video isn't to show you how to magnetize a hive tyrant or an exocrine, though I will be showing them, but rather teach the principles of how I go about magnetizing a miniature so you can do it on anything you'd like. I'm specifically using Tyranids because they are not just very organic, I was going to say, but they're all organic, right? So I think they're more difficult by far than like a tank or a space marine, where you're supposed to be, where they're supposed to have little gaps and stuff in between the armor and moving pieces. I also have some tips for you that I've never seen anywhere else, so it's worth keeping an eye out for them, even if you're experienced at magnetizing your miniatures. First of all, let's go over the tools you need and some stuff I'd recommend. The first and most important thing is magnets. I know, it's shocking, right? You can't believe it. Your mind is blown. It's already, like, what, a minute in? Okay, anyway. So, yeah, magnets are super important. The higher the N value, the better the magnets are, with N52s being the strongest to my knowledge. If you already have some lower strength magnets, it's actually not that big a deal. I have a couple of tricks I use to get the most out of them. You'll also need a pair of clippers, a hobby knife, super glue, and a miniature to magnetize. Another shocker. There are also a couple of things I'd recommend aside from those tools. First up is a pair of really sharp clippers like the one that Tamiya makes. I wouldn't use the God Hands though, because unless you're on quite small miniatures, those blades can bend quite easy on the thicker sections of the miniatures. I'd also recommend a pair of nitro gloves so the super glue doesn't stick to your hands. Also, in case something happens to you like it did to me where the magnets got too close together because I was trying to show something on video, yeah, that way you can pull them off and the super glue doesn't stick to your hands because the oil in your skin activates the super glue. Also, highly recommend accelerant for the super glue to make life easier, and some kind of epoxy like green stuff. Another thing that will come in handy is some paper towel or tissues, but preferably both. Lastly, I'd recommend saran wrap for a special trick I've not seen anywhere else. Okay, step 1. I wanted to make some kind of acronym like KISS or ABC, but it's really all about planning, so ABP or something. Always be planning, or plan ahead. I don't know. You can't spend too much time looking at your fig and planning exactly how you're going to magnetize it, and not only that, but like picturing how it's going to look when they're together and when the magnets are flat, so you know like what angle you want everything to be at when it's resting. Some minis are easier even when they're organic, but like I'm using the Hive Tyrant today, and we're gonna want to put some green stuff in behind where the arms will go inside the mini, so it's better to drill the holes first and then add the epoxy. This is actually a better method, but it is more time consuming. You'll want to do a pilot hole and then widen it slowly so you need less torque and you're less likely to unduly damage the mini. In step 2 is place the epoxy putty where you intend to put the magnets. I really like to take my time so there is enough room so the epoxy putty doesn't stop the magnet from going all the way in, but so that there's enough space, so like, because it'll push the epoxy around in there. So you need to have a little bit of extra space, but you also want it to kind of cup and envelop the magnets when you put them in. You'll notice that I use 3 magnets inside the Mini, which is me actually fitting in as many as I can. This will create a strong bond for the attaching magnet on the other side, the deeper and however many more magnets you have. This will make up for a lot of, the weaker magnets. So yeah, I then put the magnets in and push down with the back end of a paintbrush. Obviously, I put a little super glue in behind there just for an extra stick. But yeah, or you can use like a disposable chopstick or anything that's not magnetic. If you do use something magnetic, which I have done before by mistake, it will be a nightmare. But yeah, so then I also, after they're in and I've got them in place, I actually add a little bit of super glue around the edges where the magnet is like attaching in the hole there, and then I take a bit of like tissue or a paper towel and I just sop up any extras. I just want to create a seal around the edge of it so it won't move when we're doing other stuff later on. And if you pop a little accelerant in there, then you don't need to worry, essentially, because it's not going anywhere. So yeah, you could also glue 3 magnets together when you're putting them in, but I haven't found it necessary when I do it this way. But yeah, that should get things really nice and tight, and they shouldn't move. I like to make the arms the opposite polarization. So like it's like as if you were sticking one set of magnets all the way through the miniature. Most of the time you're not going to do this unless it's something smaller like a Space Marine. But if the inside of the body is the same on both sides, then the negatives or the positives of the magnet are going to be facing each other and push away. This can create a little bit of a problem. If, however, you're doing something more difficult, like you have a miniature with 4 arms, blessed is the 4-armed Emperor, then you're going to want to have them so that they ideally don't have the same polarity above and below each other, because the back of the bottom one will want to stick to the top one, so it'll flip out quite easily. But if you want to have the ability to switch top to bottom loadouts, and you might want to be able to do this, then you're going to have to do it this way. So just be really careful. Use the paintbrush, hold it down using nitro gloves, and some accelerant will really help your problems. Okay, step 3. Now it's time to move on to the part you want to attach to the body. This doesn't have to be an actual body, of course, it is in this case, but it could be the body of a tank, for example. And in the case of a tank, it's really easy, and you might want to skip, I don't recommend it because hopefully there's some tricks in here for you, but you might want to skip to the exocrine section, which I do plan on marking in the timeline. So first up, I try to line up the arm or whatever I'm attaching first and get an idea how I want it to be posed. This is mostly for aesthetics, but will really help for the bond too, because we want to make sure that the magnet can sit right against each other. That's the most important thing for getting a really strong pull on the magnets. Once you know the angle, and you like the angle you want the piece to sit at, cut the end off with a nice sharp pair of clippers, or scrape or cut the piece if it isn't totally flat. You can also score the end with a hobby knife to make the super glue and the magnet attach more completely but I've never personally had, I've never needed to do that myself. Now you want to put the magnet on the Mini so you can see how it'll line up when everything is attached. Note down if the piece you're fitting doesn't fit exactly in the middle, of course, because that way you'll need to glue the magnet, in line with that. So if it doesn't, sometimes the magnet, like in this case, when I was gluing the Hive Tyrant, most of the magnets didn't actually go right in the middle of the arm. They were usually off slightly to the side. So it's important to note that down so you can get it nice and flush. Now you simply glue it on. This is where the nitrile gloves really come in handy, as they won't instantly activate the cyanoacrylate like your skin will. If you're using accelerant, which I highly recommend you do, it's great to put the accelerant itself in a dropper bottle instead of using it as a spray, because they usually come in a spray. Because the spray can actually like blast off the mini or push the mini to the side, and then you're activating the super glue, and it can just be this nightmare scenario. But yeah, I just bought a 50-cent like Vallejo paint bottle, empty paint bottle thing, and it's a lot more controlled this way. Be sure to check as many times as you need to that the polarity will be set right. I have a trick for that because because we sealed the body with super glue around the edges, it won't move. I put a stack of magnets onto my lamp. Here I'm using the flat part of my clippers because I needed to keep the lamp for light. But this way I can know if I'm taking from the right side, as long as I do it exactly the same way. I just stick it on there and then I flip it around, and that way I know that when I put the magnet down, it's going to be going on the right way. But always check before gluing, because it will save you all manner of time later on, like when I was magnetizing a Land Raider Crusader Redeemer and things went awry. I'll just say that. But once the magnet is in place, you'll notice that I put enough super glue so that the magnet's sides are covered as well. Then I put a drop of accelerant on one of the sides, which will not instantly, but pretty much instantly harden the super glue where it touches. If any spills over the side, I just wipe it with a tissue. But yeah, that way it keeps it exactly in place where I want it. And then, I'll kind of go around the edges and make sure that there's enough accelerant that's touched all the super glue, and then I just wipe it down with a tissue or a paper towel afterwards. Give it like 10 seconds to fully harden, and as long as you've got the accelerant on every part of it, then it's fine, and you can actually test it out pretty much right away. And look at that. You can't even see any guns or any gaps, excuse me. It just fits in there like that, and it works great. So part of the reason that I chose the Hive Tyrant especially to make this video was because every single piece has some kind of aspect. So now I'm going to move on to two-handed guns. They're a little more complicated, and this won't work for every two-handed gun, but sometimes it's a little bit tighter, and in this case I would actually suggest gluing the hands together for whatever the gun where the guns connect. Like if you're doing like a Space Marine or something like that, or something like that where their hands and everything is really tight, then just do the magnets at the shoulders. Don't do it in between like I'm going to do here. So the trick that I use for the Hive Tyrant is what I actually should have done for the Tyrannifex, but I didn't. I used the aforementioned trick of just gluing the hands together and then figuring out the shoulders later on. But it actually works a lot better if you do this instead, because that way it will always line up if if it's possible, right? So you do all the stuff you normally do, where you cut off the ends, make sure everything's going to fit right, but you'll want to take a little more time here to make sure that everything, when it's together, when both hands are on the gun or whatever it is, and and the shoulders are in, that everything lines up. The more time you spend here, the less time you have to spend later bending it. So I do all that normal stuff where I put the magnets in everything, and then at the end here I take a heat gun, but you can use a blow dryer, I believe, as well, and I heat up the connection between the two, and I get it pretty soft, and then I basically bend it into place. And you might have to take a couple of turns at this. I did. It's not that big a deal, but it'll help. It'll certainly help in the long run. You can see that I'm moving the heat gun back and forth because you don't want to keep it at any one spot for too long, or you can melt through the miniature, get air bubbles, all sorts of crazy stuff. You'll also notice that I heated up my mat here. I didn't mean to do that. I've never done it on my desk before, but I had to do it to record this video. But you'll want to do it somewhere better than this, let's say. But as you can see, everything together, it looks great. The miniature, you can barely see the magnets even when it's not primed, and when it is primed and or painted, you won't see them at all. You can keep going here and get it even more flush than I did. I just stopped at this particular spot because I was satisfied, but I probably should have gone a little bit further like I did for the other bits. Okay, so now we're on to the sauce. This trick that I use isn't necessary, but it really helps the bond between magnets, as the closer the magnets are together, the better the bond, of course. So let's see if we can get them right against each other. First part is the same, drill out, and use the epoxy putty to hold the magnets in place. I think I used 3 again this time, but it might have been 4. Seal off the edges with super glue, and and so it won't go anywhere, yada yada yada. Okay. Now on to the other part of the mini, in this case, the giant penis gun. Oh, you never noticed that the exocrine is a walking penis gun? Okay, well, the funniest part is that the penis gun, the gun itself, is the part of the organism that does all the thinking. So I feel like that's not a super subtle hint on GW's part, and why I may or may not paint the gun purple. But putting that aside, put the magnets in the epoxy and get ready to slap the gun onto the body of the miniature. But wait, there's more. Before you do that, put a single piece of saran wrap in between, and then put the piece on and either use clamps, or in this case I used twine because clamps wouldn't work obviously, to affix the piece to the body tightly. This way, the still soft epoxy putty will gradually pull apart enough so that the magnets come right up against each other, but they won't stick together because of the saran wrap when you pull it off. You'll get literally as strong a bond as you possibly can out of your magnets, because they will pull apart to the point where they are actually right up against each other. The only downside is if you grossly underestimate where the magnets need to go, but hopefully you won't because you were carefully planning things out ahead of time. And then if that is the case, you can always put in a little bit of epoxy putty to reinforce the areas that look weak, but I've literally never had to do this. But yeah, then after everything's together, I wait overnight for the putty to fully harden, and then the next day you get to check out what you've done. But as you can see, the bond is so strong. I can literally wave these guys around, and anything but the wings on the Hive Tyrant won't come off no matter how hard I shake it. But yeah, anyway, so these are some of the tricks that I use. If you have any more tricks, I would love to hear them in the comments. I think that these are the basic principles of it, but if I've missed some stuff that maybe other people have tips, then maybe I'll make another video if people like this. But yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching. Right at the end of the video here, as I'm editing it, I'm kind of realizing that maybe people might want to see everything, like every single piece of footage. I think I've got like 2 or 3 hours worth of footage of me going through it. I was thinking I could actually upload a video and you could just see everything, like start to finish essentially. If you're interested in that, pop me a line in the comments and maybe I'll make that if people are interested. But yeah, hit all the buttons, and please let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content, because it's not something I've done before, and even though it was really difficult this first time, it should be easier next time. So thanks again. See you next time.